A gentle breeze stirred the summer air, carrying the mingled scents of grilled burgers, fresh grass, and tangy barbecue sauce. Laughter and animated conversation laced the atmosphere, as neighbors and friends wove through clusters of folding chairs and picnic tables. It was the annual Bloomsbury Neighborhood Cookout, a cherished tradition that gathered people of all ages in a sprawling backyard framed by tall oak trees. Colorful string lights swayed overhead, casting a festive glow even in mid-afternoon. Children darted around the lawn, squealing as they chased bubbles or tried to capture errant balloons. Adults mingled in friendly circles, some flipping burgers at the massive grill, others sipping lemonade or sweet tea. In one corner, a small table was piled high with potluck dishes, fruit salads, corn on the cob, homemade pies, and brownies. Between the warm sun and the cheerful ambience, it felt as though nothing could disturb the easygoing joy of this gathering. Near the gate, perched on the fringes of the crowd, sat Daisy, a stout, fawn-coated Pitbull with a broad face and gentle brown eyes. Despite her sturdy build and formidable jawline, Daisy was best known for her calm and affectionate nature, a cherished companion to her owner, Marisol, who lived in one of the older houses on the block. Marisol had been invited like everyone else, but today she volunteered to watch the grill while the host, Cooper, made a quick run to the store for extra ice. Daisy stayed close, tail thumping whenever a friendly face approached. Many neighbors, especially those who had seen Daisy around the block, would stop for a moment to ruffle her ears or offer a piece of grilled hot dog. A few children came over in giggling fascination, marveling at how this big dog would greet them by licking their hands. Daisy was unbothered by the hustle and bustle, content to observe with alert eyes. Every so often, she'd wander off a few steps, sniffing at the breeze that carried whiffs of sizzling meat and blossoming garden flowers. But she always circled back to Marisol. Some guests commented on how sweet it was to see a pit bull so mellow amid so much commotion. "She's always been good with crowds," Marisol replied with pride, "but if she senses something's off, she lets me know." As the day wore on, the soft clink of glasses and plates merged with the constant drone of conversation. People lounged in lawn chairs, joked about work or the latest neighborhood gossip, and occasionally hollered at a passing friend to join. A few brought guitars, strumming cheerful tunes. It was one of those summer gatherings that felt timeless, as if the warmth of the day and the camaraderie could stretch on forever. A bit later, a newcomer appeared, a friend of Cooper's named Isaiah, who had recently moved into a nearby apartment. Isaiah was an unassuming figure, slim build, dark curly hair, and a ready smile. He seemed immediately taken by the lively atmosphere, smiling broadly as he introduced himself to various people. Eventually, he gravitated toward Marisol at the grill. They struck up a light conversation about the neighborhood's best coffee shops, Isaiah mentioning he had just tried the new cafe on Maple Street. Daisy ambled over, sniffing at his ankles. Isaiah chuckled, crouching slightly. "Hey there, girl, aren't you friendly?" Daisy sniffed his shoes with interest, her tail giving a half sway. She recognized no fear in his posture, so she reciprocated by gently nuzzling his hand. Marisol, noticing how comfortable the two seemed, offered him a fresh burger. "Here, try this," she said, smiling, "and grab a seat anywhere." The day continued in a sun-kissed blur of chatter and good food. Eventually, Cooper returned, hoisting 2 large bags of ice. Laughter erupted as guests teased him about always underestimating how much ice they'd need. With the grill in Cooper's capable hands, Marisol was free to join the festivities. She stepped away, Daisy following calmly. Isaiah found himself wandering between tables, engaging in small talk with neighbors. He sampled coleslaw, deviled eggs, and some sweet tea spiked with just a hint of lemon. He paused at a shady spot beneath a large oak, where an elderly couple sat recounting stories of how Bloomsbury had changed over the years. Daisy meandered after him, though she kept her distance as people came and went. At one point, Isaiah noticed a stray wasp hovering near the dessert table. He flicked it away without much thought, returning to his conversation. What no one realized was that Isaiah had a severe allergy to bee and wasp stings, something he'd discovered as a teenager. Typically, he carried an EpiPen in his backpack, but having come directly from an earlier errand, He'd left his bag in his car, thinking the short walk from the curb to the backyard was no big deal. A short while later, the sun dipped lower, bringing a golden tinge to the yard. Shadows stretched across the lawn, and the string lights overhead began to glow more noticeably. People started shifting chairs, forming new conversational clusters. Isaiah, feeling sociable, drifted from one circle to the next. Daisy, for reasons not entirely clear, began lingering near him more often. She seemed to trail him like a quiet guardian, her gaze occasionally flicking up at him or scanning the crowd. No one thought much of it, as Daisy was known to move around freely. Some teased that maybe she just liked the smell of Isaiah's cologne. Or maybe he'd accidentally dropped a crumb of burger on his shoe. In truth, Daisy's body language was subtly changing. Her posture grew more attentive, her tail stiffer. Marisol, busy chatting with Cooper and another neighbor, didn't immediately notice the shift. Isaiah paused by a table laden with sugary desserts, cupcakes, brownies, a homemade apple pie from Mrs. Wilson next door. He reached for a brownie, then felt an odd pinch on his arm near his elbow. It was so quick and slight that he brushed it off as a passing mosquito. He resumed nibbling the brownie, but a creeping itch began to build at the sight of the stain. Within minutes, a flush of red started to spread across his forearm. He didn't notice right away. The yard was filled with distractingly good smells, and someone was telling a funny story that made everyone around him burst into laughter. Daisy, however, seemed riveted on him now. She crept closer, making small whining noises. Another neighbor joked about Daisy wanting a scrap of brownie, but the dog didn't show her usual tail wag or drool for food. Instead, she circled behind Isaiah, sniffing him intently, then paced around him in an odd, restless pattern. Marisol, glimpsing Daisy's behavior from across the yard, felt a slight worry prickle in her gut. Daisy usually only circled like that if she detected stress or something amiss. Marisol started weaving through the crowd, calling, "Daisy, hey, girl, what's going on?" The Pitbull ignored her, remaining fixated on Isaiah. Meanwhile, Isaiah felt the first signs of tightness in his chest. It was subtle, just a small strain, like trying to breathe in a slightly smoky room. He rubbed his arm, which now had a noticeable welt. "Weird," he muttered, stepping away from the table to find a quieter space. His heart rate picked up, and a mild dizziness made him blink hard. Though he tried to brush it off, a small alarm bell rang in his mind. He recognized that numb sensation, a tingling creeping through his fingers. He glanced around, searching for a place to sit. Daisy whined loudly, startling some guests who turned to see what was happening. The dog began to pace around Isaiah in earnest, occasionally bumping him as though trying to hurt him. Confused, he stumbled a step backward, hand pressed to his chest. The next moment, a wave of heat rushed through him, followed by an alarming constriction in his throat. Panic bloomed as he recognized the signs of a severe allergic reaction. He tried to speak, but his voice came out a mere rasp. In a few seconds, the reaction escalated. Isaiah's face flushed, and his breathing became labored. Daisy let out a sharper bark, one that cut through the background chatter. Marisol rushed over, her eyes darting between the dog and the man. Isaiah's complexion was blotchy, his eyelids swelling. He managed to choke out, "Allergic," stung by something, before sagging against a nearby table. His lips started to tinge with a bluish hue. Guests fell silent, realizing this was far more serious than a casual discomfort. Someone shouted, "He's having an allergic reaction." Another rushed to dial 911 on their phone. Daisy danced anxiously around him, her nails scraping the grass, whining in a high pitch. Marisol knelt beside Isaiah, trying to keep him upright. "Where's your EpiPen?" she asked, voice trembling. Isaiah's eyes widened, fear flickering. "In car, didn't bring," he gasped. He barely got the words out, his throat feeling impossibly tight. His heart hammered as adrenaline coursed through him. The edges of his vision blurred. Daisy pressed against him, as though pushing him to stay conscious. Marisol turned to the crowd. "Who has an EpiPen? Or do we have one?" Several people glanced at each other, panicked. The idea of a random EpiPen being on hand was slim. But one woman near the back, Harriet, stepped forward. "I carry one for my daughter. She's allergic to bee stings." She sprinted toward her purse, rummaging frantically. Meanwhile, A couple of men tried to get Isaiah onto a chair while another neighbor grabbed a damp cloth to press against his forehead. The entire yard was in disarray. Some people hovered in shock. Others fumbled with their phones to either call emergency services or anxiously text loved ones. Shouts overlapped. "Move aside. Give him space. Does anyone know how to administer an EpiPen?" Daisy, pinned between the small group and Isaiah, refused to budge. She kept pawing at him, whining in a low, desperate tone. Marisol placed a hand on the dog's back, tears threatening to spill as she stroked Daisy's fur. "It's okay, girl. We're getting help." Harriet returned, brandishing a slim EpiPen case. Her hands shook as she said, "I'll do it." She moved quickly, explaining what she was doing as she knelt by Isaiah's side. "I just have to remove the cap, place it against his thigh, and press." With that, she jabbed the EpiPen into Isaiah's leg, holding it there for the recommended few seconds. Isaiah let out a guttural sound, his eyes rolling back for an instant. But almost as quickly, the rush of epinephrine hit his system. His chest spasmed, and he inhaled a ragged breath, as though a clamp on his lungs had loosened just enough. Harriet removed the pen, her face pale with concern. "Stay with us," she urged. "Paramedics are on their way." Daisy continued her small, anxious circling, pressing her nose to Isaiah's shoulder when he leaned forward to cough. The crowd parted as a siren wailed in the distance. Marisol held Daisy's collar, tears shining in her eyes, though she tried to stay calm. "You're okay," she kept whispering to Isaiah. "We're here. You're okay." It felt like an eternity, but it was likely only a few minutes before paramedics arrived, weaving a stretcher through the yard. They found Isaiah breathing with difficulty, still flushed, but no longer on the verge of total airway closure. Daisy refused to leave his side, so Marisol gently guided her away, giving the medics room to work. "Pitbull let us know something was wrong," a bystander explained to the paramedics, voice cracking with emotion. Others nodded, recounting how Daisy had circled Isaiah and whined insistently, alerting them to his distress. One paramedic, tall, with a gentle voice, knelt to scratch Daisy's head. "Good dog. You did real good." He shot Marisol a reassuring smile, then turned back to assist his partner in stabilizing Isaiah. They administered more medication, placed an oxygen mask over Isaiah's nose and mouth, and checked his vitals. A wave of relief swept through the gathered neighbors when one paramedic announced, "He's responding. We'll transport him for further observation." They carefully lifted Isaiah onto a stretcher, the wheels rattling on the uneven grass. Daisy let out a final whine as the group guided him away. Marisol stepped forward to grip Isaiah's hand for a moment. His eyes found hers, watery but full of gratitude. "Thank you, tell your dog, thank you," he managed in a strained whisper. She nodded, tears threatening again. "You'll be fine," she whispered back, then let them load him into the ambulance. The crowd watched in solemn unity as the siren receded into the distance. For a long beat, the backyard fell silent except for Daisy's panting and the distant chirp of crickets. Chairs, tables, and half-empty plates bore witness to the abrupt shift from celebration to crisis. Then Cooper, face still pale from shock, placed a hand on Marisol's shoulder. "He's going to be okay," he said softly. "And your dog, she's a hero." Guests murmured agreement, some wiping their eyes, others exhaling shaky breaths. Children, who had been ushered to a corner during the commotion, peeked over shoulders, sensing the gravity of what had happened. Harriet, still clutching the used EpiPen, sank onto a folding chair, whispering about how she'd almost not come that day, or not brought her kit. "I'm just glad I did," she said, voice quivering. Daisy stood at Marisol's side, tail not wagging but swishing in slow arcs, as if waiting to see whether all was truly well. Marisol knelt, arms curling around the pitbull's neck. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered, burying her face in Daisy's fur. "You knew he needed help before any of us did. Good girl." For a moment, Marisol simply held her dog, letting the warmth and relief flood through her. Daisy pressed her big head against Marisol's shoulder, huffing in what might have been doggy relief. Over the next hour, as the sun dipped below the horizon, guests trickled away, subdued by the reminder of how quickly emergencies can arise. Some stayed to help clean up or offer comfort. Cooper collected scattered napkins and cups, occasionally glancing at Marisol and Daisy with admiration. Never underestimate a dog's intuition, he muttered. Marisol nodded, recalling how Daisy, typically easygoing, had singled out Isaiah with unwavering focus. She couldn't help but wonder how the dog sensed the allergic reaction, perhaps some shift in Isaiah's scent or body language. Whatever the mechanism, Daisy's alertness had bought precious minutes, enabling them to administer the EpiPen in time. Before leaving, Harriet approached, patting Daisy's broad back. "What a remarkable dog," she said, voice thick. "If she hadn't caused a scene, we might not have noticed Isaiah so quickly. I was across the yard. I wouldn't have realized he needed help. Not until it was, maybe too late." Marisol forced a tight smile, tears slipping down her cheeks. "She's always had this knack," she admitted, "but I never imagined something like this could happen." In truth, her heart still fluttered with leftover adrenaline. Daisy, sensing Marisol's emotional swirl, offered a gentle lick on her forearm, as if to say, "Everything's all right." That night, after the yard had emptied and the last guests departed with hushed goodbyes, Marisol took Daisy home. The dog padded through the front door and flopped onto the living room rug. Exhausted from the emotional upheaval, Marisol sank onto the couch, letting out a trembling sigh. Her phone buzzed with messages from neighbors, updates on Isaiah's hospital check-in, well wishes, gratitude for Daisy's actions. She responded with thumbs-up icons or typed quick notes like, "So glad we got him help in time." Finally, after dealing with a swirl of notifications, she flicked off the overhead light, leaving just the soft glow of a side lamp. Daisy lifted her head, ears perked. Marisol motioned for her to come closer. The Pitbull climbed onto the couch with all the caution of a dog aware she was stepping onto sacred human furniture. Marisol patted the cushion. "Yes, it's fine, tonight, we can break the rule," she whispered, as Daisy curled beside her, head on her lap. Marisol stroked the dog's fur in gentle, rhythmic motions. The hush of the house seemed to magnify the day's events, each detail replaying in her mind: the crowd's laughter, the sudden alarm on Daisy's face, Isaiah's breathless panic, the urgent bark that changed everything. She felt waves of gratitude and amazement that a typical weekend cookout had nearly turned tragic. Yet fate, in Daisy's heightened senses, stepped in. She rested her cheek on Daisy's head, murmuring, "You saved him." Daisy gave a small, contented huff. Then, as if lulled by the even strokes of Marisol's hand, she dozed off, breath slowing. Outside, the summer night was thick with the hum of cicadas, an echo of the earlier hush. Marisol, too wired to sleep just yet, sat in the dimly lit room, absorbing the relief of knowing that a crisis had passed. A life had likely been saved, and a gentle Pitbull had demonstrated her unwavering devotion in a moment no one would soon forget. Nightfall wrapped the Bloomsbury neighborhood in a quiet hush, but whispers of the day's events lingered long after the last guests had departed. Even at nearly midnight, porch lights remained on here and there, and text messages buzzed with updates about Isaiah's condition. In one tidy house near the end of the street, Marisol sat with her Pitbull, Daisy, thinking over the surreal transition from backyard fun to medical emergency. She still felt echoes of the tension, the helplessness that had surged through the crowd until Harriet's EpiPen and Daisy's alertness helped save Isaiah's life. Marisol had decided not to go to bed until she heard official word on Isaiah. Around 12:30 a.m., her phone chimed. A neighbor texted that Isaiah was stable, the hospital staff planning to keep him for overnight observation. Relief coursed through her. Daisy, who had dozed off with her head on Marisol's lap, stirred at the vibration. She blinked, ears flicking. Marisol stroked her broad head, murmuring, "He's okay, we can rest now." And so the household slipped into uneasy sleep, haunted but also comforted by the knowledge that a crisis had passed. Daisy, as if sensing Marisol's lingering jitters, stayed close through the night, occasionally rousing to nuzzle against her leg. By morning, the house stirred in soft sunlight. The day dawned bright and warm again, as though nature itself had shrugged off the previous day's drama. Marisol brewed coffee, scrolling through a flood of texts on her phone. Everyone who had been at the barbecue wanted details. Some neighbors who hadn't attended sent messages of astonishment upon hearing secondhand stories. A Pitbull did that. Incredible. Another read. Can't believe Daisy recognized his reaction before any of us. She's a hero dog for sure. Marisol smiled wryly at her phone. Daisy, ambling in with a slow tail wag, seemed thoroughly uninterested in her new hero status, instead nosing her food bowl for breakfast. By late morning, Harriet came knocking. Her eyes were red from a short night's sleep, but she greeted Marisol with a small, relieved grin. She explained that she'd just visited Isaiah at the hospital. They expect to release him later today, she said, exhaling with relief. He's exhausted but so grateful. Doctor said that EpiPen and fast action made all the difference. She paused, glancing down at Daisy, who lay by the doorway with a lazy pant. And he specifically asked me to thank your dog. Marisol crouched to pat Daisy. I think we're all grateful, she murmured, feeling a surge of emotion. This could have ended so badly. They invited Harriet in for coffee. Over steaming mugs, the conversation moved from the trauma of the previous afternoon to the future. Harriet recounted how Isaiah realized he'd never leave his EpiPen behind again. He feels guilty for causing a scene, she added with a rueful smile. But obviously it's not his fault. Marisol nodded, brushing away the notion that blame belonged anywhere. In emergencies like that, any detail can make a life or death difference, like Daisy's weird behavior. Or Harriet having an EpiPen for her daughter's allergies. Everything lined up. Eventually, Harriet headed out, promising to keep Marisol updated if she heard more. Marisol watched from the porch as Harriet disappeared down the street, the sun glinting on freshly watered lawns. Daisy leaned against her leg, gazing up. Marisol scratched behind the dog's ears. I'll bet you're hungry for a walk. Huh? Daisy gave a little huff of agreement. So Marisol fetched a leash and they set off toward the park. As they strolled, Marisol replayed the events in her mind. She'd always known Daisy had a sharp intuition. There'd been smaller incidents before. Like the time Daisy alerted her to a child stuck behind a neighbor's fence or signaled when someone was upset. But nothing of this scale. This immediate significance. It unnerved Marisol to think how close Isaiah had come to real danger. She found herself glancing at Daisy often, as though searching for a sign of how the dog felt. Daisy, for her part, seemed calm, occasionally sniffing the air or wagging at passers-by who recognized them from the barbecue. A few neighbors they passed offered wide smiles or curious waves. One older gentleman paused on the sidewalk, cane tapping the concrete, to say, "Heard about your dog's heroics. Fine animal you've got there." Marisol thanked him, feeling both proud and slightly self-conscious. Daisy's unwavering gaze reassured her that the dog wasn't bothered by the attention. To Daisy, it was just another day, another walk, no matter how big an impact she'd had the day before. Later that afternoon, a text from Harriet announced that Isaiah was being discharged. He'd asked if Marisol might stop by his apartment in the evening, so he could personally thank her and Daisy. Marisol hesitated, unsure if it would be awkward or if Isaiah needed rest. But Harriet insisted. He's insisting. He's not the type to let something like this go unacknowledged. Around 6 p.m., with the sun still lingering in the sky, Marisol clipped Daisy's leash and headed to the address Harriet sent. It was a modest complex, a short walk from her house. Daisy trotted confidently, pausing now and then to sniff a hedge or watch a passing cyclist. Inside, a small elevator brought them up to the second floor. The corridor smelled faintly of disinfectant and someone's dinner cooking. Apartment 2B. She knocked lightly, heart thrumming with anticipation. The door swung open to reveal Isaiah, tired circles under his eyes but wearing a grateful smile. "Hey," he said softly, stepping aside. "Come in, please, and thank you." Marisol offered a gentle smile in return. "Glad you're okay," she replied as Daisy patted in, nails clicking on the linoleum. Isaiah closed the door, motioning toward a modest living area with a couch and a small coffee table. The place was sparsely furnished. He'd apparently just moved in, but it exuded a cozy vibe. On the counter sat a half-unpacked box of kitchen supplies. "I feel like I owe you both more than I can say," Isaiah said, sinking onto the couch. He ran a hand over his face, clearly still recovering. If Daisy hadn't, well, if she hadn't made a scene, I don't know how long it would have taken for people to notice. Marisol felt a pang of empathy. We were all a bit scattered with so many people there. But Harriet had an EpiPen. And that saved you. Daisy just helped ring the alarm. Isaiah nodded, looking down at the dog. Daisy gazed back, ears perked. He extended his hand, and Daisy sniffed it, tail wagging in cautious greeting. "I used to be a cat person," he murmured, half laughing, "but now I'm starting to see how incredible dogs can be. Particularly this one." Marisol crouched to let Daisy know it was okay to approach. Daisy gently licked Isaiah's palm, then placed her chin on his knee, as if to say, "I'm here." Isaiah's eyes shone with emotion. She's something else," he managed. "Last night in the hospital, I kept thinking, how did she know?" Marisol shrugged, though her eyes held a trace of wonder. "I've read that dogs can pick up on changes in body chemistry. Some can detect low blood sugar or stress hormones. Maybe she sensed your adrenaline spike or heard your breathing pattern change. Or maybe she just recognized something was off with your scent. I wish I knew exactly." Isaiah listened, letting out a slow exhale. "I guess it doesn't matter how. Really, just that she did. And I want to thank you. I was going to pick up some coffee gift card or a dog treat hamper. But none of that seems enough." Marisol smiled, touched by his earnestness. "No thanks necessary. I'm just relieved you're here talking to me. That's more than enough. I'll accept a pat on Daisy's head on her behalf." They chatted for a short while, about Isaiah's upcoming follow-up appointment, the medication he'd received, and the sense of vulnerability that came with a near-death experience. He admitted he'd been too casual about his severe allergy, trusting that he wouldn't encounter trouble on a day as ordinary as a neighborhood cookout. "Lesson learned," he said grimly. "I'll never go anywhere without my EpiPen again." Before they left, Marisol exchanged numbers with Isaiah so they could stay in touch. Daisy, picking up on the shift in conversation, stood by the door, tail wagging softly, as they said their goodbyes. Isaiah knelt one last time to stroke her fur. "Thank you, girl," he said, voice thick. "I owe you big time." Daisy licked his cheek, eliciting a chuckle. Marisol watched, heart-warmed by the simple, wordless exchange. Once in the hallway, she and Daisy made their way back home. The sun had nearly set, painting the sky in lilacs and oranges. Marisol breathed in the quiet evening air, feeling a calm sense of closure settle in. Daisy walked with a relaxed posture, as if she too sensed the matter was resolved. In the days that followed, word of Daisy's alert behavior spread. Neighbors recounted the story, how a Pitbull had effectively saved a man's life by circling him and whining until someone realized he was in danger. Some people who hadn't attended the cookout approached Marisol on the street to ask, "Is it true your dog saved that man from an allergic reaction?" She found herself repeating the tale, each time feeling a surge of pride in Daisy's uncanny instincts. Some were simply astonished that a Pitbull, of all breeds, would act as a lifesaver. "You know how the media is," one neighbor confided. "They show these stories of Pitbull attacks, and it scares people. But now we have living proof that they can be the sweetest, most loyal dogs around. Do you mind if I post about it online?" Marisol shrugged, eventually agreeing. She felt no need for Daisy to become some viral sensation, but she also recognized how good it might be for people to see a positive Pitbull story. The next thing she knew, a local neighborhood Facebook page featured a post titled, "Daisy the Pitbull, Neighborhood Hero." It garnered a string of encouraging comments, likes, and shares. A few folks hinted that they'd love to meet Daisy in person, just to see this wonder dog for themselves. The attention brought a mix of emotions. On one hand, Marisol felt a maternal surge of pride for Daisy. On the other, she didn't want them gawked at like a spectacle. Daisy was, at heart, just a normal dog, loving, intuitive, yes, but still content chasing squeaky toys and enjoying belly rubs. So Marisol balanced polite acceptance of the praise with gentle boundaries. If people wanted to say hello, that was fine, but she politely declined any request for big gatherings or dog demonstration visits. Not everyone in the area was equally impressed, though. A few holdouts rolled their eyes at the story or wondered if it had been overblown. Maybe the man was already calling for help, and the Pitbull just happened to be there. Some scoffed. But such skepticism was largely drowned out by the neighborly consensus that Daisy had made a meaningful difference. Even those who once eyed her warily now seemed more friendly, greeting her with relaxed smiles when she passed by on walks. About a week later, a small piece ran in the local newspaper, a human interest snippet titled, "Cookout Crisis Averted by Pitbull's Timely Alert." The short article recounted the barbecue scene, Isaiah's allergic reaction, and Daisy's insistent behavior that signaled something was wrong. It was accompanied by a grainy phone photo from the event, showing Daisy in the yard amid picnic tables. Marisol read it with a quiet thrill, especially the concluding line, "Her breed might carry an undeserved stigma." But Daisy reminds us that compassion and instinct can come from any dog, especially one who senses danger before we do. In her private moments, Marisol kept replaying the memory of Daisy's anxious circling around Isaiah, and the raw fear in Isaiah's eyes as his throat closed. She wondered if she should consider some kind of training for Daisy to hone that awareness. Much like some dogs learn to detect seizures or diabetic crashes, she spoke to a friend who volunteered at a therapy dog organization. And the friend told her that while formal medical alert dogs go through rigorous instruction, many ordinary pets have a baseline capacity to pick up on changes in human physiology. It's all about reinforcement, the friend explained. If Daisy ever picks up on another allergic reaction or a health issue, you can encourage her behavior with calm praise or specific cues. But it might be a one-off. You never know. Marisol mulled it over, unsure if she wanted to transform Daisy into a specialized working dog. Part of her cherished Daisy's easygoing life of walks, naps, and casual yard exploration, yet she also saw the potential for Daisy to help others if the situation arose. So she took small steps, praising Daisy whenever she sniffed or reacted to someone in possible discomfort. She introduced Daisy to new people and let the dog explore them with quiet curiosity, quietly observing if Daisy displayed any unusual reactions. But no dramatic incidents followed. Most interactions were pleasant normalcy, Daisy wagging at kids, sniffing ankles, searching for stray bits of food. Meanwhile, Isaiah recovered quickly. Within a few days, he was back to his routine, EpiPen holstered in his bag. He texted Marisol occasionally, sharing progress. Caught myself double-checking for wasps like a paranoid person. Haha. Or, Doc said I'm lucky I had help so fast. He even made a joke about crocheting a dog-shaped medal for Daisy. Marisol laughed at that, imagining Daisy wearing a little crocheted trophy around her neck. One warm evening, Harriet hosted a smaller, more casual gathering, a little, thank you, get-together in her backyard. This time, it was just a few close neighbors, Isaiah included, along with Marisol and Daisy. They grilled a few hot dogs, turned on some quiet music, and chatted in the glow of twinkle lights. It was a calmer, more intimate scene, no big crowds, no bustling potluck. Daisy lounged near Marisol's feet, occasionally rising to greet people who approached. Toward the end of the night, Harriet cleared her throat, clearly preparing for a small speech. I just want to say, she began, that last weekend was a huge scare, but it also reminded me how connected we can be as neighbors. She nodded at Isaiah, who gave a small, appreciative smile. Then Harriet looked at Daisy, grin widening, and it reminded me that sometimes we get guardians from unexpected places. The small group raised plastic cups of lemonade in a toast. To Daisy, Harriet said. Everyone chorused. To Daisy, the Pitbull's ears perked up at the sound of her name. She lifted her head, tail thumping softly. Marisol felt heat rush to her cheeks, both flattered and a bit shy. Daisy, as if sensing the attention, got up and trotted over to Harriet, gently pressing her muzzle against Harriet's hand. There was a moment of warm laughter, followed by a comfortable silence as the group reflected on how animals sometimes show a capacity for empathy beyond human comprehension. Isaiah scratched under Daisy's chin. Yeah, I owe her everything, he said quietly, voice thick with gratitude. Marisol smiled, pride mingled with relief. She's a good dog, she said, simple and sincere. I'm just glad we got to see that side of her. And I hope nobody ever has to be in that situation again. As Harriet's night wound down, everyone parted with hugs and murmured well wishes. Marisol and Daisy strolled home under the soft glow of street lamps. The neighborhood felt different now, a bit more cohesive, a bit more aware of how fragile life could be. Marisol, glancing at Daisy's sturdy silhouette by her side, felt a wave of calm wash over her. In a world where accidents happen and fear can lurk in unexpected corners, Daisy stood as a quiet testament to vigilance and love. Marisol tried to imagine the dog's thought process that day, a subtle smell or a tension in Isaiah's posture that no human noticed. A quiet sign, a soft alarm in Daisy's mind that spurred her to circle and whine until people paid attention. She realized, in that moment, how lucky they all were that Daisy had recognized trouble and refused to be ignored. It wasn't a dramatic leap or an epic rescue in the conventional sense. But it was enough to save a life. Enough to remind everyone that trust and empathy sometimes come from the most unassuming places. Like a pit bull calmly padding around a busy lawn, seeing what no one else sees. When Marisol unlocked her front door, Daisy padded in, nails clicking softly on the hardwood. Marisol locked up, set the leash aside, and then sank onto the couch. Daisy hopped up next to her, resting a broad chin on Marisol's thigh. Absent-mindedly, Marisol stroked behind Daisy's ears. "I guess you've changed a few minds about pit bulls," she said in a low voice, a faint smile ghosting her lips. Daisy let out a contented sigh. Eyes drooping, Marisol felt warmth expand in her chest. Changing minds, saving a life, truly heroic feats for a dog who only wanted to love and be loved in return. The following week, Bloomsbury found itself humming with a subtle, renewed sense of unity. Neighbors who'd merely waved at each other before now paused to chat more warmly. Children trotted around with bubble wands, excited to pass by Marisol's yard in hopes of catching a glimpse of that heroic pit bull. From behind garden fences, elderly residents would greet Daisy with a half smile and a nod, recalling how quickly she'd acted during that frightening cookout incident. It seemed the entire neighborhood had absorbed a lesson in empathy and readiness, both for human emergencies and for re-evaluating preconceived notions about so-called dangerous dog breeds. Marisol couldn't help but notice the shift. She'd always felt Bloomsbury was a safe, if somewhat reserved, community, but now, as she walked Daisy through the tree-lined streets, she felt that quiet, watchful acceptance transform into genuine warmth. People no longer gave Daisy nervous glances or crossed the street to avoid them. Instead, families sitting on porches would wave, greeting Daisy by name. Teenagers on bikes would call out, "Hey, Daisy," as they sped past, sometimes even squeaking their brakes to ask about the dog's day. Marisol responded with polite gratitude, aware that not every neighborhood was so open-minded when it came to pit bulls. That sense of acceptance wasn't universal. However, a few days after Harriet's smaller gathering, Marisol walked Daisy to the local dog park, a patch of fenced-in grass at the northern edge of Bloomsbury. The dog park was typically a lively place, owners chatting in clusters, dogs chasing each other or rummaging through the communal water bowl. Daisy had always been well behaved there, greeting smaller dogs with a cautious sniff and matching the energy of bigger, rowdier dogs if they invited her to play. But that morning, as Marisol and Daisy approached, she noticed a small knot of owners giving them a hard stare. "That's the pit bull," one woman muttered just within earshot. Crossing her arms, Marisol slowed her pace, uncertain if she should approach or keep Daisy outside the fence. Two men standing with the woman exchanged uneasy glances. One had a muscular black Labrador that yapped excitedly at Daisy, as though unafraid. The other held the leash of a miniature poodle that was quivering with tension. Marisol could sense the owner's wariness even if the dogs themselves seemed curious rather than hostile. She lingered near the entrance gate, checking Daisy's posture. Her dog's tail waved in a slow, tentative arc, ears tilted forward in polite interest. Daisy wanted to go in. This was a familiar routine, after all, but Marisol hesitated. She was used to some people being cautious. But the air bristled with an unusually direct skepticism. "Let's just see how it goes," she murmured to Daisy, unhooking her leash once they were inside the double-gated entry. She stepped through cautiously, scanning the area for dogs Daisy might prefer to greet. Immediately, the black Labrador bounded over to Daisy, all wagging tail and playful leaps. The two dogs sniffed each other with the typical canine ritual, then began trotting off in a friendly circle. Marisol sighed in relief. At least Daisy hadn't been met with aggression. But the small group of owners near the fence lingered. She caught fragments of conversation. "Don't care what they say. Pit bulls can be unpredictable. Heard one story in the news about a neighbor saved. But that doesn't erase their genetics." Marisol's shoulders stiffened at the overheard remarks. She'd encountered prejudice before, but it stung more acutely now. After everything Daisy had demonstrated, she tried to ignore them. focusing on Daisy's interactions instead. Daisy soon spotted a brown spaniel bounding after a tennis ball and joined the chase, loping across the grass in a wide circle. Within minutes, the black lab, the spaniel, and Daisy formed a playful trio, chasing each other through the sunlit grass. "You see that?" one of the men near the fence muttered, arms crossed. "She's so big, she might accidentally hurt the smaller dogs." Despite the frustration swelling in Marisol's chest, she forced a calm stance. Daisy wasn't accidentally hurting anyone. If anything, she moderated her pace when the smaller spaniel's stubby legs couldn't keep up, pivoting away in a playful feint. A teenage girl with a beagle strolled over to Marisol, offering a soft grin. "Your dog's name is Daisy, right? She's so nice. Didn't she help that guy who had an allergy attack?" Marisol felt a rush of gratitude for the question. "Yeah, that was her," she replied gently. "I'm glad people remember." "Totally," said the teen, patting her beagle's head. "Everyone's talking about it at my school. Well, at least the ones who live around here. My folks said it was a big deal, like." No one realized he was in trouble until Daisy whined. She shrugged, letting out a snort. "I guess dogs are more observant than we give them credit for." "Exactly," Marisol agreed, feeling a flicker of relief that not everyone in the dog park was suspicious. She stayed to watch Daisy and the other dogs frolic. The group by the fence eventually dispersed, though she heard them grumble about Pitbull mania as they left. She tried not to let it sour her day. If Daisy was content, that was what mattered. Over the next hour, Daisy had a thoroughly enjoyable play session. She even performed a few gentle corrections on an overenthusiastic golden retriever puppy that kept tugging on her ear. Nothing aggressive, just a brief, calm muzzle nudge that taught the puppy boundaries. People who actually observed Daisy in action seemed reassured. Marisol chatted with a few owners, some of whom had already heard about Daisy's hero moment and wanted details. But once she got home, the earlier tension at the park lingered in Marisol's mind. She mulled over a decision. Should she address that prejudice head-on? Or was it better to quietly demonstrate Daisy's good temperament without confrontation? She recalled how local media had run that short article praising Daisy. Perhaps they could do a follow-up that talked about Pitbull stereotypes, though she wasn't sure she wanted that level of publicity. One evening, while journaling her thoughts, Marisol decided to approach a local dog trainer for advice. The trainer, Heidi, had a reputation for advanced canine behavior knowledge and was known to hold community seminars on dog-friendly neighborhoods. Marisol emailed Heidi, summarizing Daisy's rescue scenario and the subsequent mixture of admiration and skepticism the dog now faced. "I'm proud of Daisy, but I'm also worried about the negativity we still encounter," she wrote. "Any guidance on bridging that gap?" Heidi's response came the next day, warm, encouraging, and full of practical suggestions. "If you're open to it," Heidi wrote, "we could arrange a small demonstration or talk at a local event, showing how dogs, including pit bulls, can alert to human distress or how they can be gentle in family settings. You could share Daisy's story. It might help shift public perception." Marisol considered the idea carefully. Speaking publicly wasn't exactly in her comfort zone. But if it helped reduce stigma and allowed Daisy's positive example to shine, maybe it was worth it. She talked it over with Harriet and Cooper, who both thought it sounded brilliant. "People are curious," Harriet said. "Why not show them what Daisy can do and help them see pit bulls aren't scary?" Soon enough, Heidi began planning a small workshop titled, "Understanding Our Dog's Instincts," to be hosted at a local community center. It would feature a short talk on canine body language, a demonstration of different skill sets, and an opportunity for Q&A. Heidi asked if Daisy and Marisol would be comfortable participating, especially in the segment about dogs detecting subtle changes in humans. Marisol felt nerves swirl, but remembering Daisy's calm under pressure, she accepted. Word of the event spread via social media and neighborhood flyers. Some people scoffed, "Dogs can't be taught to sense allergies." They insisted, misunderstanding that it was more about innate alertness than specialized training. Others eagerly signed up, intrigued by the notion that a local pit bull had performed what they considered an almost supernaturally protective act. A few weeks later, on a Saturday morning, the community center's modest auditorium buzzed with activity. Parents arrived with children, older couples shuffled in, A few serious dog enthusiasts from surrounding towns set up folding chairs. Heidi set up a makeshift stage area with space for demonstrations, while next to it, a small table displayed pamphlets about dog breeds, responsible ownership, and local rescue organizations. Marisol and Daisy hovered off to the side, waiting for the workshop to begin. Daisy looked surprisingly comfortable in the crowd, tail gently waving as she sniffed ankles. Many attendees recognized her, offering wide grins or words of thanks. One woman placed a gentle hand on Marisol's arm, whispering, "My nephew has a severe allergy. I was so moved when I heard your story. I'm just grateful you were there to help that man." Marisol blushed, crediting Daisy with a soft smile. Soon, Heidi stepped onto the small stage, tapping the microphone to test it. "Good morning, everyone," she began, voice echoing slightly in the acoustics of the room. "Thank you for coming to Understanding Our Dog's Instincts. I'm Heidi, a certified trainer and behavior consultant. Today, we'll explore how dogs perceive our emotions, stress, and health cues, and how we can build a stronger bond with them." She introduced a few dogs she'd brought along: a German Shepherd adept at advanced obedience cues, a middle-aged Labrador who served as a therapy dog in retirement homes, and a tiny mixed breed who specialized in emotional support for an owner with PTSD. The audience leaned in with interest, especially when each dog performed a short demonstration, responding to subtle signals from Heidi or from volunteers. Then Heidi gestured toward a quiet side of the stage, beckoning Marisol and Daisy. "Finally, I'd like to highlight a local story that many of you might have heard about. This is Daisy, and her owner, Marisol. Daisy is a Pitbull who alerted neighbors to a man experiencing a severe allergic reaction at a neighborhood cookout. Let's hear a bit about that." Marisol's heart thumped. Public speaking wasn't her forte, but Daisy's calm presence gave her courage. She stepped forward, Daisy at her side, took a breath, and spoke into the microphone. She kept her words simple. "Hi, I'm Marisol. My dog, Daisy, is just over 4 years old. At a recent cookout, she noticed something was wrong with a guest, Isaiah, before any of us humans did. He was going into anaphylactic shock from a wasp sting, but didn't realize how serious it was at first. Daisy whined, circled him, and basically forced us to pay attention. That gave us enough time to administer an EpiPen. Isaiah's fine now, but without Daisy, we might have been too late." A ripple of appreciative murmurs swept the room. A few people clapped, and Daisy perked her ears at the sound. Tail wagging, Marisol continued, "We're not claiming Daisy has special medical training. We think she sensed changes, maybe in Isaiah's scent or body language, and got agitated because of it. Pitbull or not, many dogs can pick up on these cues if they're bonded to humans and not ignored." Heidi nodded. "Beautifully put. Dogs often detect subtle shifts, chemical changes in sweat, posture differences, or the unique pattern of stressed breathing. Some dogs, like Daisy, respond with anxiety or restlessness because they know something's off. If we remain open to these signals, we can respond faster to potential emergencies." The audience sat rapt as Heidi asked Marisol a few more questions. Did Daisy normally do this sort of thing? How did people react given Daisy's breed? Marisol answered honestly, mentioning both the outpouring of support and the lingering prejudice. "We still meet folks who believe pit bulls are inherently dangerous," she said, a tinge of sadness in her voice. "All I can say is, this dog saved a man's life. That's dangerous in a good way, I guess," she joked, earning a laugh. Heidi then guided a short demonstration. She asked Marisol to feign distress. "Just do something subtle, like slump your shoulders. Breathe erratically, and let's see if Daisy notices." Nervous but game, Marisol took a spot at center stage, turned away from Daisy, and tried to mimic shallow breaths, letting her posture slump as though she were in physical or emotional pain. Daisy, resting by Heidi, perked up. In a matter of seconds, Daisy trotted over, sniffed at Marisol's back, and whined softly. She nudged Marisol's leg, then circled once, pressing against her. The crowd murmured in admiration. Heidi smiled, stepping in to explain. "See that? We didn't do any special training for this scenario. Daisy simply recognizes a shift in her owner's posture or breathing, associates it with discomfort, and tries to intervene." Applause and a chorus of warm comments erupted. A few skeptics in the crowd asked pointed questions. Isn't that just an accident? Couldn't any dog do that? Heidi responded diplomatically. Yes, many dogs might do something similar if they sense distress. The difference is that pit bulls are often maligned in the media, so we don't always hear about their empathetic side. She paused, letting that sink in. Today's about celebrating what all dogs can do for us if we treat them well. Afterwards, there was a Q&A session. People approached the stage to meet Daisy, voice their own stories of canine intuition, or inquire about dog adoption. One older woman confided in Marisol, voice trembling, that she'd always feared pit bulls after a childhood incident involving a neighbor's aggressive dog. But seeing Daisy, I think maybe I let that fear grow bigger than it should have. She admitted. Marisol offered a smile, letting Daisy gently sniff the woman's outstretched hand. The woman stroked Daisy's fur, tears shining in her eyes. She's so sweet, she murmured. As the crowd thinned, Heidi thanked Marisol privately. That demonstration was perfect. People need tangible examples to break stereotypes. You and Daisy gave them that. Marisol exhaled, tension sliding away. I'm just glad Daisy stayed calm. She joked, patting her dog's head. But honestly, she's used to big groups by now. After the barbecue fiasco, Heidi laughed. Maybe she's discovered her calling as a public speaker. She teased, and they parted ways with promises to keep in touch. In the days after the workshop, Marisol noticed a shift in local chatter. Social media posts circulated describing Daisy's demonstration, praising the dog's calm behavior and the community center's informative session. Even a short local TV spot aired, featuring brief footage of the event. The anchor concluded with a line that made Marisol's heart swell. Daisy may be a pit bull, but she's proven that compassion and heroism come in all shapes and breeds. Strangely, though, not everyone was enthralled. A small online forum, known for stoking breed-specific controversies, latched onto the story. Anonymous commenters recycled myths about pit bulls eventually turning vicious, or about Marisol pushing an agenda. She stumbled upon the thread one evening, dismayed at the vitriol. Words like time bomb and dangerous breed dotted the page, overshadowing the actual facts. Marisol's stomach twisted, a knot of anger and sadness forming. She considered responding but realized engaging might only feed the negativity. Instead, she closed the tab, determined not to let those unsubstantiated fears overshadow Daisy's proven kindness. During a walk the following weekend, Marisol and Daisy encountered a cluster of new faces in the neighborhood, folks from a nearby town who'd read about Daisy online. Some recognized Daisy instantly, beaming or offering a cheery, hello. But one middle-aged man, wearing a baseball cap, locked eyes with Daisy and froze. That's her? He asked, sounding almost accusatory. His teenage daughter, standing behind him, looked worried. That's Daisy, Marisol answered gently, bracing for potential conflict. The man's gaze flicked warily from Daisy's blocky head to her muscular shoulders. And she's supposed to have saved someone's life? He asked in a skeptical tone. Marisol tried to keep her tone neutral. She alerted us to a man's allergic reaction at a cookout. Yes, I wouldn't say she single-handedly saved him, but her alertness helped. The man shook his head, scowling. I can't see how a breed known for aggression can also be some hero dog. My cousin had a pit bull that turned on him. I'd never trust one. His daughter shifted uneasily, clearly embarrassed. Daisy, meanwhile, waited patiently, panting with no sign of hostility. Marisol took a steadying breath. I'm sorry your cousin had a bad experience, she said, but each dog is an individual. Daisy is gentle and well socialized. She's never shown aggression toward people or other animals. He huffed. Doesn't mean she won't. You do realize a single incident doesn't erase a breed's violent tendencies, right? An awkward silence fell. The daughter gently pulled his sleeve. Dad, come on, she's just. Marisol stroked Daisy's back in reassurance, feeling the prickle of upset simmer behind her composure. We respect your opinion, she said slowly, but Daisy's actions speak for themselves. If you'd like to meet her properly, we're open to it. If not, we'll just move on. The man snorted, turning away, but the daughter lingered a fraction of a second, sending Marisol an apologetic look. Then she followed her father down the sidewalk. Marisol exhaled, tension thrumming. Daisy looked up, ears drooping as if sensing the unpleasantness. "It's okay, girl," Marisol murmured. "Not everyone will change their mind overnight." The incident left Marisol subdued for the rest of the walk. She tried to focus on how many people had shown Daisy love and acceptance. But negativity always stung. She reminded herself that Daisy's comfort was paramount. Letting her dog sense frustration or sorrow might cause Daisy to worry. So she forced a bright tone, praising Daisy for every small thing. "Good job ignoring that barking chihuahua." Or, "That's it. Sweet girl, let's keep going." Eventually, they returned home, where Daisy flopped onto the living room rug. Marisol settled on the couch, phone in hand, debating whether to vent to Harriet or Cooper about the confrontation. Instead, she found herself scrolling through older photos of Daisy, puppy pictures with overlarge paws and crooked ears. Teenage months chasing squeaky balls around the yard. She recalled the day Daisy had come into her life. A wiggly rescue dog who defied all the negative Pitbull stereotypes. The memory warmed her heart, dissolving the gloom. Her phone buzzed with a new text from Isaiah. "Thinking of you guys today. Had a random wasp scare outside my window. But it flew away. Thank goodness. Also, Doc says I'm good to resume normal life. Just keep EpiPen handy. Hope you and Daisy are well." Marisol smiled. She typed back a quick response. "So glad you're safe. Daisy and I are doing great. Let's have coffee soon." She pressed send, comforted by the reminder of how the entire saga started and how it ended well. Daisy had made a difference that day. And for Isaiah, that difference was life-changing. No amount of skepticism from strangers could negate that fact. A few days later, Harriet called with excitement in her voice. "Marisol, you're not going to believe this. Someone from the local TV station wants to do a short interview with you and Daisy. They saw the community center segment and want to highlight her story again. Especially how she's helping change minds about pit bulls. They asked if I had your contact information." Marisol's pulse quickened. She'd never sought media attention. The earlier articles and small news clips had been surprising enough. "Oh, Harriet, I'm not sure. Daisy's not a show dog. She might get stressed under bright studio lights and such." But Harriet clarified it wouldn't be a formal studio setting, more like a short local news feature shot in the neighborhood. Maybe at Harriet's backyard or the community center. "Think about it," Harriet insisted. "It could help more folks learn what you keep telling us, that pit bulls can be lovely. Empathetic dogs." Chewing her lip, Marisol agreed to at least speak with the TV station representative. That evening, a cheerful reporter named Charlene called, explaining they were running a Feel Good Friday segment. "We want a positive story about a dog who overcame stereotypes and saved a life." Charlene said, "I promise it'll be low pressure, a few questions on camera. Maybe some footage of Daisy in a comfortable setting." After some thought, Marisol agreed. In her heart, she believed Daisy's story deserved a broad platform if it could help others reconsider breed biases. They settled on meeting that Friday at Harriet's backyard, fitting, since Harriet's place was more spacious and also the scene of smaller gatherings. The reporter planned to film Daisy interacting with Marisol, plus short interviews with Harriet and Isaiah if they were willing. The day arrived faster than Marisol expected. She found herself brushing Daisy's coat, ensuring she looked her best. Though Daisy had no clue what the fuss was about, Harriet set up a few chairs in the yard. A pitcher of lemonade on a small table. The news crew rolled in around noon. Just a camera operator and Charlene, armed with friendly smiles and easy banter. "Hi there, Daisy," Charlene crooned, squatting to meet the dog at eye level. Daisy sniffed her microphone in curiosity. Tail wagging, Charlene giggled. "She's absolutely adorable. Hard to imagine anyone seeing her as scary." Marisol nodded, letting Daisy get comfortable with the new arrivals. Meanwhile, Harriet offered them lemonade, and the camera operator scouted the best spot for filming. Isaiah arrived a bit later, still cautious around flying insects, but smiling warmly at Daisy. The dog greeted him with a gentle muzzle bump, as if to reaffirm their bond. The interview began with Charlene facing the camera, summarizing the story for viewers. "We're here in Bloomsbury, meeting a remarkable pit bull named Daisy, who recently alerted guests at a neighborhood cookout to a man experiencing a severe allergic reaction. Thanks to her warning, they administered an EpiPen in time, saving his life. Today, we hear from Daisy's owner, Marisol, and from Isaiah. Who's doing much better now? All thanks to this attentive dog. She turned to Marisol, microphone poised. Marisol, can you tell us how Daisy first indicated something was wrong? Taking a breath, Marisol recounted the events, the busy cookout. Everyone distracted. Isaiah feeling mild symptoms but not realizing it was life-threatening. Daisy circling and whining until folks took notice. She just wouldn't leave him alone. Marisol said with a small laugh. At first, we thought she wanted food scraps. But soon, it became clear she was distressed. Sure enough, Isaiah was in real trouble. And we got him help just in time. Charlene nodded, turning to Isaiah. Isaiah, how do you feel about Daisy's actions that day? Isaiah managed a grin, grateful beyond words. I was, ironically, ignoring my own body's signals, thinking I'd just overdone it with the summer heat. Daisy basically forced me to accept something was very wrong. Without her, I might have tried to drive home or push through, which could have been fatal. Charlene offered a sympathetic nod. And we understand you have a severe allergy. Does this experience change how you see dogs? Especially pit bulls? Isaiah chuckled, glancing at Daisy, who lay calmly at his feet. Absolutely. I used to be neutral, maybe leaning on cautious about dogs, especially large breeds. But seeing how Daisy responded changed my perspective entirely. She's living proof that these dogs can be gentle, intelligent, and life-saving. Charlene then asked about breed stigma, giving Marisol a chance to address the negative stereotypes. She spoke about Daisy's warm interactions in the neighborhood, the dog's typically relaxed demeanor. Pit bulls can be strong and determined, she acknowledged, and that's exactly why responsible ownership is key. With proper socialization and love, they're among the most affectionate, loyal dogs out there. The filming took about an hour, with cutaways of Daisy sniffing around Harriet's yard, occasionally trotting up to Isaiah for a pet or turning to Marisol for reassurance. Harriet chimed in with her perspective as a neighbor who witnessed the event. I saw it firsthand, Daisy's bark cut through all the chatter. We all owe her. After concluding, Charlene thanked everyone and promised to edit the piece for next Friday's segment. The camera operator packed up gear, and the small group shared a round of applause, half in jest but mostly from a sense of camaraderie. Harriet served lemonade to celebrate a job well done. Daisy, unimpressed by cameras, merely accepted a gentle ear rub from Isaiah and flopped into the patch of sun on the grass. In the aftermath, a wave of relief washed over Marisol. She'd worried about stammers or forgetful moments in front of the camera. But it seemed to go smoothly. Everyone parted ways with a sense of achievement, even if it was just a local news clip. Marisol told Harriet, if this helps one person consider adopting a pit bull from a shelter or sets aside fear, it's worth it. Harriet agreed wholeheartedly, patting Daisy goodbye as Marisol led her home. Over the next week, they resumed a typical routine: work, errands, daily walks. Life carried on without major excitement, except for occasional neighbors asking, when does Daisy's TV spot air? By Friday, Bloomsbury was collectively waiting. At 6 p.m., the local channel's Feel Good Friday segment began. Some folks huddled in front of TVs or streamed it on laptops, eager to see Daisy in the spotlight again. Marisol was alone in her living room with Daisy dozing on the couch. She turned on the TV, heart fluttering. The anchor's cheerful voice introduced the piece, and soon Charlene's footage filled the screen. Harriet's yard, a shot of Daisy sniffing the grass, and interviews with Marisol, Isaiah, and Harriet. Crisp editing made the story flow seamlessly. Cutaways to the barbecue scene, photos Harriet had provided, close-ups of Daisy's gentle eyes, Isaiah's heartfelt words about how this dog saved him. At the end, Charlene's voiceover concluded, a pit bull named Daisy reminds us that sometimes our best guardians have 4 legs. With empathy, proper care, and understanding, any dog can surprise us with their protective instincts. Daisy is living proof that heroism transcends breed boundaries. The segment ended on a shot of Daisy, tail wagging, nuzzling Isaiah's hand. Soft, uplifting music played the segment out, and Marisol realized her cheeks were damp. She sniffled, half laughing at her own emotional reaction. Stroking Daisy's fur, "You're famous, sweet girl," she whispered, letting the dog nuzzle her in response. "But to me, you'll always just be Daisy." That broadcast ignited another flurry of positivity. Acquaintances from neighboring towns texted Marisol, exclaiming how touched they were, or how Daisy's story made them reconsider adopting a rescue. The local rescue shelter's phone reportedly lit up with calls from people referencing Daisy as an example of how a Pitbull could be the perfect family pet. Harriet told Marisol that a friend who once refused to set foot near a Pitbull was now open to fostering one, having watched the TV feature. That weekend, while grocery shopping, Marisol encountered another wave of friendly recognition. A store clerk approached shyly, asking if she was Daisy's mom from the news. When Marisol confirmed, the clerk beamed. "I had a Pitbull growing up," she confided softly. "Best dog I ever had. People don't realize what they're missing." Marisol thanked her for sharing, picking up Daisy's favorite brand of dog treats with a grin. On her way out, she recalled the negativity from the dog park and that suspicious father-daughter duo. Perhaps they, too, might have caught the broadcast. Maybe it'd shift their perspective. Or maybe not, but at least the information was out there. A few days later, in an even bigger surprise, an email pinged into Marisol's inbox from a regional dog magazine that showcased uplifting canine stories. They wanted to run an article about Daisy. "We'd love to spotlight her as part of our Everyday Heroes section." The editor wrote, "We can do a phone interview or meet at your convenience." Marisol inhaled deeply, glancing at Daisy, who was sacked out on the living room floor, chewing a squeaky toy with content abandoned. Another feature? She felt a twinge of worry about overexposure. Did she really want Daisy's life to revolve around media appearances? But then again, every positive piece might help more dogs, especially pit bulls, find acceptance or adoption. Letting out a measured breath, she typed a polite acceptance. "Sure, I'm happy to chat. Let's keep it low-key. Daisy's not a performing seal," she joked. The subsequent interview took place over the phone, much simpler than cameras. Marisol spoke candidly about how Daisy had come into her life, their daily routine, the barbecue rescue, and the complexities of battling breed stigma. The editor promised a balanced feature focusing on Daisy's calm heroism, with a dash of caretaker perspective. Over time, Marisol noticed that, ironically, Daisy seemed unaffected by her own rising celebrity. The dog remained as she'd always been, sleeping sprawled across her dog bed, chasing a squeaky ball in the yard, occasionally indulging in gentle wrestling with Marisol. But there was no denying that people recognized Daisy more often now. Random joggers would pass them on the street and exclaim, "Is that Daisy? Hi, Daisy." She'd respond with a wag and a curious sniff, never quite grasping the fuss. Meanwhile, Isaiah recovered fully, rejoining normal social life with a new sense of caution around potential stings. He even visited Marisol's house once, bearing homemade cookies as a thank you gesture. Daisy hovered around him with friendly interest, apparently forming a bond that extended beyond the emergency. At one point, Isaiah petted Daisy's head, voice low with gratitude. "Hard to believe I almost didn't notice my own reaction that day. Feels surreal, but every time I see you, I'm reminded of how fragile life can be, and how a dog's instinct saved me." As the months rolled on, Bloomsbury's interest in Daisy remained warm but eventually settled into a calmer acceptance. People no longer brought up the allergic reaction event constantly. They'd greet Daisy the same way they greeted each other's dogs, albeit with a bit more affection. The local dog park saw less tension. Even the group who once sneered seemed to lighten up, especially after they watched Daisy's gentle interactions multiple times. Some never apologized openly, but their posture grew less guarded, acknowledging the dog with polite nods. Then, a new twist surfaced. Harriet approached Marisol with an idea. The Bloomsbury Neighborhood Committee was planning a modest Community Hero Award ceremony. Typically, it honored residents who did volunteer work or performed some philanthropic deed. This year, the committee wanted to extend that honor to Daisy, acknowledging her role in saving Isaiah. Harriet admitted it might feel unconventional to give an award to a dog, but the committee insisted it was the perfect highlight for Bloomsbury's sense of unity and compassion. Marisol's immediate reaction was a mix of flattery and embarrassment. "An award for Daisy?" she repeated, blinking. Harriet explained that the ceremony was no grand affair, a short segment at the next town hall meeting, followed by a small certificate or plaque. "They might ask you to accept on her behalf." "Obviously," Harriet smiled. "You could bring her." 2. She'd just stand next to you while you say thanks. If that's okay. Feeling a flutter of nerves. Marisol eventually agreed. She liked the idea of Bloomsbury celebrating Daisy's impact. Even if the dog herself couldn't care less about plaques. All Daisy wants is belly rubs. Marisol joked. Harriet clapped, delighted. The night of the town hall meeting. The small auditorium bustled with local officials, residents, and the usual smattering of regulars who attended these gatherings. Daisy sat calmly at Marisol's side, wearing a simple collar with a small bow in Bloomsbury's green and blue colors. Harriet had insisted on that little flourish. Sure, it would charm the crowd. The room was a standard municipal hall, folding chairs, a podium, a long table where council members usually sat. The overhead fluorescent lights hummed softly. After the usual budget and community updates, the council chair, a kindly older woman named Ms. Tanner, stood up to announce the Community Hero Award. She briefly summarized the program, then smiled wide. Tonight, we're honoring an unusual but very deserving resident, Daisy, a Pitbull who helped save a neighbor from anaphylactic shock. Daisy demonstrated that compassion comes in many forms. So let's welcome Daisy and her owner. Marisol, up here. A wave of applause rippled. Marisol's cheeks heated as she guided Daisy to the front. The dog, unbothered by clapping, wagged politely. Ms. Tanner presented a small framed certificate that read, "In grateful recognition for exemplary alertness and community spirit." Beneath that, in smaller print, awarded to Daisy, Bloomsbury Pitbull. Quiet laughter and a chorus of "ah" arose. Marisol accepted it with a shaky grin. She offered a few words. "Thank you all." Daisy might not understand awards, but she understands friendship. She was just doing what any loyal dog would do, helping someone in distress. We're honored Bloomsbury is recognizing her and, by extension, acknowledging the positive side of Pitbulls. The applause swelled. Daisy's ears perked at the noise. Her expression curious. Harriet snapped a few photos from the audience, tears glinting in her eyes. Isaiah, seated near the front, gave a standing ovation, a grin splitting his face as he patted his chest over his heart. Ms. Tanner concluded with a short remark. Here in Bloomsbury, we like to say neighbors look out for neighbors. Daisy looked out for a neighbor that day. So this fits perfectly. As they left the stage, a few people in the audience rose to greet them. Some petted Daisy, remarking on how calm she seemed. A council member shook Marisol's hand, saying, "Your dog is a credit to you and the entire community. We appreciate that." Someone else asked for a quick photo, capturing Daisy gazing up at the camera with serene eyes. That night, with the certificate on her kitchen table, Marisol felt an odd swirl of gratitude, pride, and a bit of humor. "You're the talk of the town, Daisy," she teased, setting the plaque on a small shelf. "Not bad for a pup who just wanted to share a cookout." Daisy responded with a wag and a huff, as though unimpressed by her own accolades. Despite everything, life returned to a quieter pace. Daisy's daily rhythms, sleeping in patches of sunlight, bounding after squirrels in the backyard, greeting passers-by, continued. Unwavering, the hype around the barbecue incident gently receded into Bloomsbury lore, a story people told newcomers alongside local legends. Meanwhile, Isaiah fully integrated into community life, forging new friendships. Occasionally, someone would jokingly say, "At least we know who to call if you get stung again, Daisy," and he'd laugh, acknowledging that he kept his EpiPen in his pocket now. No exceptions. One mild autumn afternoon, as leaves began to turn golden, Harriet organized a small potluck for the folks who'd grown especially close during the Cookout saga. Marisol, Isaiah, Cooper, Ms. Tanner, and a few others. They gathered in Harriet's yard once more, though in smaller numbers. Daisy laid in a comfy patch of grass, occasionally wagging her tail whenever someone looked her way. The conversation drifted from yard upkeep to local events, from the changing seasons to how grateful they were that last summer ended with no tragedy. At some point, Harriet raised a plastic cup in a toast. Here's to simpler times, no emergencies, no stains, just neighbors enjoying each other's company. A chuckle rippled through the group, and cups clinked. Marisol discreetly slipped Daisy a small piece of cooked chicken, and the dog accepted it with gentle politeness. "Actually," Harriet continued, "I want to mention something. I'm thinking of writing a brief letter to the local government about acknowledging pit bulls in a more balanced light. Maybe suggesting we do an awareness day or something for rescue dogs. Something small, but official. Ms. Tanner perked up. That's not a bad idea. We always do a community pet parade in the spring. But it's more for fun. We might add an educational angle, breed facts, responsible ownership tips, success stories like Daisy's. Cooper nodded, swirling his lemonade. Bloomsbury could use that. People fear what they don't understand. The group turned to Marisol. She shrugged, a smile forming. If it helps even one dog find a better home or changes one mind, I'm all for it. Daisy will come, obviously, though she might expect more chicken as payment. Laughter emerged, light and genuine. Isaiah patted Daisy's flank. She'll deserve every bite. The evening concluded in gentle camaraderie. The group disbanding with full bellies and warm hearts. Marisol left Harriet's yard with Daisy trotting at her side, feeling a sense of closure and promise. That final walk home, the crisp autumn air brushed her cheeks, and Daisy occasionally paused to sniff fallen leaves. It was peaceful, the same as many nights before, but the underlying knowledge remained that they'd all been tested once. And Daisy had met the challenge with quiet courage. At home, Marisol flicked on a lamp, set her keys down, and watched Daisy settle onto the couch, limbs splayed in a lazy sprawl. A small grin tugged at her lips. She recalled the earliest days of adopting Daisy, the uncertain stares, the cautionary warnings about pit bulls she'd heard from acquaintances. It had all led to this moment, this sense of acceptance. She gently scratched behind Daisy's ears. You changed so many minds. Sweet girl, she whispered, including mine, in ways I never expected. Daisy blinked, tail thumping. She yawned, letting out a soft grunt that sounded almost like contented agreement. Marisol realized that, in the grand scheme, daisies were small flowers that symbolized innocence, simplicity, renewal. She found that strangely fitting for a dog who'd shown such pure empathy and brought new growth to the hearts of those around her. As the night wore on, Marisol let her mind wander to future possibilities. Perhaps more events promoting positive dog stories. Maybe a collaboration with the local shelter to highlight adoptable pit bulls. Or even a fun Bloomsbury tradition where Daisy led the pet parade. She fell asleep thinking of daisies blooming in bright fields, each petal representing a new perspective, a fresh start for both dogs and humans. And so Daisy's story didn't end with that single rescue. It continued quietly, weaving into the fabric of Bloomsbury's identity. Neighbors would retell the tale. Remember that cookout? Everyone was busy, but Daisy saw trouble. Over time, it became local folklore, a gentle reminder that heroes often stand on four paws, wagging their tails in earnest devotion, and that a single dog's intuition can spark a chain reaction of compassion, trust, and the willingness to see beyond labels, proving that sometimes, the difference between life and tragedy can be as subtle as a dog's soft whine in the summer air.